dismiss our classes. Guys, can you let me know when we're live? So I can say hello to the live stream family. Everybody seems to be so chatty today. I bet you're tired, huh? Maybe we can get one of the kids to rub your feet, right? As they all run away. Oh, live stream family, where are you? We're waiting for you. We want to say hello. Oh, let's see a camera light. Are we getting closer? Do I have chocolate in my teeth? Okay, good. Don't zoom in close, just in case. I can't see. Are you waving? Are we there? We're good. Is the live stream family with us? Woohoo! Hey, family. Okay, good. I see it now live. I need the big letters. Good. We're glad that you joined us. I specifically waited for them to turn the music off in the back, which is not happening yet, and then for you to join us so you could hear a couple of announcements that I have. Wow. Perfect timing. It worked. It worked, Raph. Good job. Okay. Right quick, I'm going to do this without messing up what you have set up already up here, because I know I'd get in so much trouble if I just went and closed that. So I won't. So a couple of announcements, and I needed my calendar so I got the dates right. So do y'all remember what's coming up? I have some good students in here. So code is coming up. Saving your pennies? Everybody? Okay, all right. Got it on your calendar? Getting things ready? Good. Okay. Also, Passover's coming up. So, and much sooner than Sukkot. So what I wanted to tell you is a couple things leading up to Passover week. Next week. First of all, be getting the leaven out. If you have little ones, you can make that really fun. If you have bigger ones, just make them eat it. Which is fun, right? Mike likes that part of it. Okay, so next Wednesday night, the 9th, April 9th, because of everything that we have with all of the staff doing and everybody planning and all of the last-minute leaven hunting and all of that that's going on, we are not going to have a Wednesday night service 1 week from tonight. So there'll be no Wednesday night service. And you can all pick at Jeremy Capps because he was going to teach that night, and he says, whew, I got out of it, so we're just going to make him teach twice, but you can just, some other time. No, he's... his schedule, actually, this worked out really good for him. So Wednesday night, the 9th of April, a week from tonight, there's no service. And then I have a dentist appointment. Oh, no, that's not for y'all. Next, I have on the 12th, which is Shabbat, a week from this coming Shabbat, there will be no morning service. There won't be anybody in this building, and the OCI building will already be set up for the Seder, because we're doing that on Friday. Nobody's going to go in on Shabbat and set up for that. So no Wednesday night service next week and no Shabbat morning service next week. And then the Seder will be that evening. You should have all the information for that. It starts at 6:30 sharp. The outside doors will open at 4:30. The sanctuary doors will open at 5:30. And we'll tell you the rest after that when you get there. It's a surprise. So anyway, I think besides looking for an email to register to volunteer on Friday before Passover and whatever else they needed volunteers for, but especially Friday before, putting offloading tables and getting chairs set up and everything. If you will just be looking for that email, I think we're going to post it. Denise said maybe on the tribe captains, give it to them so they can send it out, and we'll also send you an email. So be looking for that so we can be a little more organized with the help and the times that we need it, so we don't get everybody all at one time and nobody on the other end. So just to try to make it easier on everybody and those who are facilitating. Did I miss anything? Okay, so I think we have some little lambs that are ready to go be with Miss Nayla. And Miss Nayla, is that yellow air outside, is it treating you okay or not? Okay, let's pray for Miss Nayla and others who are having a hard time. When I came in this morning, I'm not kidding you, I thought a powdered, sulfur powder truck had exploded somewhere and that I was going to see emergency lights and all that. It was really that yellow, and the whole valley was that way. I thought something had happened, like a factory had blown up somewhere. It was just pollen. So it was just pollen. Okay, all of our treasures. I told y'all I ate chocolate. You've been warned. Okay. All of just Junior Quiver first? Okay, Junior Quiver, General Pernack, over at the door. He's eating healthy, getting healthy, looking trim over there. Y'all need to ask him what he's doing. Miss Amy's taking good care of him. And it's working because he said they're staying well. There could be a message there. I feel it. I'm not going to teach it. Unless he says, but that's okay. It's not my thing. It was healthy chocolate. It was very healthy chocolate. Now I'm convicted. No, it was healthy chocolate. In moderation, yes. I did eat it in moderation. Yes, baby girl, your class already went, so you can go join Miss Nayla. Okay, Senior Quiver. General Doll is at the door. And with that, if you will welcome this guy, Mr. John. Which number are you?
Take your pick.
Mr. Holsti, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, I've already got one on my head right now. So, well, shalom, shalom. I am John, and I'm going to talk to you about, if I can get it pulled up here, about questioning the narrative. I talked about this a while ago, and we'll try that button and see what happens. That's not what we want. We want this one right here. Okay. About 4 weeks ago, I talked about questioning the narrative, about the things that were being fed in the media and in popular culture, and how maybe there's something we ought to be skeptical about. I'm going to continue with that vein of thinking tonight. Okay, out of curiosity, what was yesterday? Sort of. It's the one day a year we all think critically. Scams are going on. People are trying to fool you. It's the one day a year that's in our minds. So maybe we ought to have that in our head more often. That there's a narrative being pushed, there's an agenda that we ought to be thinking about all the time. Who's been following the news? Anybody? Yeah? Okay, good. A lot of speculation recently. A story picked up by WorldNet Daily and the Daily Mail and several other outlets about in 1988, the CIA did some remote viewing and thought they found the Ark of the Covenant. Anybody heard that? Yeah. You know what the prompt was that they gave the remote viewer? Looking for a box containing a box made out of acacia wood, gold, and silver. And everybody thinks, well, that's the Ark of the Covenant, except those aren't the metrics we're given in the Bible. Think critically. All right. So this is Questioning the Narrative, Part 2. And the things I'm going to be talking about is, well, how did I get here? How did you get to where you're at? You probably got here because you are capable of thinking. You are capable of reasoning for yourself. And you probably came here because of something like, well, what happened to the fourth commandment? Or, man, should we be eating this stuff? On and on and on. So you can think critically. However, now we all know from Scripture there's coming a time when there's going to be a deception so great it could fool even the elect. So we need to have this in the back of our mind. We need to be thinking critically all the time about all the stories that are being pushed on us, all the narratives that we see. So that's the first part I'm going to cover tonight. The second part, questioning God. It's going to seem like kind of a left-hand turn, kind of like it doesn't belong, but I think it does, so bear with me on that. And then the vector. We have any pilots in here? Bill. So what is a vector? Yes. So Chuck Missler always used to say the end times are going to be a sprint to the finish line. We know where we're going, and it's fast. So that's our vector. All right, moving along. And you may ask yourself, how did I get here? There was a popular song almost 40 years ago from the Talking Heads called Once in a Lifetime. And their singer, David Byrne, he was listening to late night radio. And all these hellfire and brimstone preachers, and they were making an impact on him. He thought, you know what? I think there's a song in this. And I'm going to read you some lyrics to the song. And it's about questioning how you find yourself, where you're at, what happened to bring me to this place. And I thought it'd be interesting to take those lyrics from that song, put them back into a message. So it went from something from God to the secular, and I'm going to try and take it back to God. So you tell me what you think here. This is what he says. And you may find yourself living in a shotgun shack. You may find yourself in another part of the world. You may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Indeed, how did I get here? And then the chorus goes, it's the same as it ever was, nothing ever changes. Second verse, you may ask yourself, how do I work this? Where is that large automobile? This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife, because you're starting to think critically. And of course, all these things probably are. But at the very last, it says, well, what is that beautiful house? Where does that highway go to? Am I right? Am I wrong? Oh my God, what have I done? That would be the ultimate end of questioning the narrative, questioning everything. And this one's just for me. This is David Byrne. Gulf of America has now become the Gulf of Mexico has become the Gulf of America, has become the Gulf of David Byrne, I guess. Anyway, I thought that meme was cute, so let's put it up there. So how did we get here? If you can remember, the first time I talked, I had a bunch of quotes from a bunch of scientists and thinkers and deep intellectuals reasoning how they were going to disregard where the evidence was pointing, and that even if it looks like there's a creator, there can't be one because we have a prior commitment to naturalism, materialism, and reductionism. Well, this time around, I've got a bunch of quotes from a bunch of deep thinkers who say just the opposite. They have come kicking and screaming into, if not a biblical worldview, theism or intelligent design. They've come to the understanding that none of this could just happen. It's impossible. So I just want to give a few of these so you might get an idea of what these deep thinkers are reasoning. I had to have some tea here. Oh, that's better. Okay. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Test everything and hold on to what is good. I read this the first time around. It still holds true. We need to test everything, including the spirits. And John says, beloved ones, do not believe every spirit, but prove the spirits, whether they have Elohim, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. So the world has a different agenda than you do. It has a different agenda than the Bible does. So don't believe everything you read on the interwebs. And I had that quote from Abraham Lincoln. Don't believe everything you read on the internet last time around. He knew. All right. This is from Werner Heisenberg. Who's heard of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle? Nobody. All right. Bill, you get a gold star for the day. So the Heisenberg uncertainty principle concerns quantum mechanics, specifically light, whether it is a wave, whether it is a particle. And he won the Nobel Prize for his work in this. And the answer is yes, because it's hard to know whether it's a wave or a particle. But anyway, he was a really deep thinker, a Nobel Prize winner, and he says the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will make you an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. He was intellectually honest about this. And he might have been quoting Francis Bacon of atheism in 1601, where Francis said, a little philosophy inclineth a man's mind to atheism, but deep in philosophy brings men's minds about to religion. Also another contemporary of his, Alexander Pope, said, a little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pyrean spring. There, shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us up again. And he wrote an entire 100-stanza poem about this. Another really deep thinker. So if Heisenberg got these ideas from these great men, he's just carrying on from the ones who had gone before. Here's one of my favorite quotes. It is not just religious people that have religious beliefs. Think about that. The people we talked about last time who would not entertain a biblical worldview had a religious belief. Their belief was materialism and reductionism and scientism, for lack of a better word. It's the default philosophy that we inherited from the 19th century. Scientific materialism is failing on multiple fronts. And this is a quote from Stephen Meyer. He's got a couple of books that question the narrative that we're being fed about materialism and reductionism. He says, there have been big shifts in science and philosophy that put materialism on the defensive, leading people to spiritual realities that were never even considered. His books include Return of the God Hypothesis, Darwin's Doubt, and The Signature in the Cell. He has a doctorate of philosophy in science. He thinks deeply about science. So I think he's qualified to make this observation. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit more. This guy, Alan Sandage. Anybody ever heard of him? He was Edwin Hubble's protege. You've probably heard of Edwin Hubble. Who's heard of Edwin Hubble? All right, the Hubble telescope, right. We used to live not too far from Marshfield, Missouri, where he was actually born. They got a big Hubble telescope out on the courthouse lawn. It's pretty cool. But anyway, this guy was his protege. And he came to believe, and this is one of the quotes that I like from him. I find it quite improbable that such order came out of chaos. There has to be some organizing principle. God to me is a mystery. But the explanation for the miracle of existence, why there is something instead of nothing. Why there is something instead of nothing. Frank Tipler, another scientist, this is what he has to say. When I began my career as a cosmologist some 20 years ago, I was a convinced atheist. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that one day I would be writing a book purporting to show that the central claims of Judean Christian theology are in fact true, that these claims are straightforward deductions of the laws of physics as we now understand them. I have been forced into these conclusions by the inexorable logic of my own special brand of physics. He's intellectually honest. He's reporting on what he actually sees. He's not just parroting the party line. And that's where we have to be. Okay. Charles Thaxton. Charles Thaxton is another scientist. I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Let's see. Thaxton, I think I might have missed the one I wanted to talk about, but that's all right. Thaxton is a scientist who was there was a big conference in 1985, and it was called the University Challenges Science or something like that. And anyway, he was one of the people at that conference who, completely unbeknownst to anybody, decided to give a defense of intelligent design and theism. And it really kind of rocked the scientific world. It gets better than this, but here's his quote that he gave. As regard the origins of life, our uniform experience is that it takes an intelligent agent to generate information, codes, messages. As a result, it is reasonable to infer there was an intelligent cause of the original DNA code. DNA and written language both exhibit the property of specified complexity. Since we know an intelligent cause produces written language, it is legitimate to posit an intelligent cause as the source of DNA. So in a nutshell, what he's saying is, every time we see an intelligent code, which is language, which is mathematics, which is music, it always goes back to an intelligent code giver, an intelligence that writes this. Never once have we observed information coming from nothing. So his deduction was, if we always see information and things that make sense coming from an intelligent source, then DNA, the building block of life, must come from an intelligent source. And I thought, that's just brilliant. He's calling it the way it is. There's another guy at this conference. I think it was Sandage. Anyway, he's the one we talked about before. There's his picture right there. Let's see if I can find the quote here. Okay, I'll just wing it. Sandage at this conference, he was invited to speak along with a lot of other people. And what they did is they had the atheists on this side of the stage, and they had the Bible-believing, intelligent design / Christians, everybody who believed that there was a God involved for all this, on this side of the stage. And they had all the participants coming up and sitting down. And he was a big deal in the scientific community. And so at this conference, he walks up to the stage and he sits down with the theists. And there's a big gasp goes throughout all of the crowd because this wasn't expected. And so from that, he gave a defense of his newfound faith in Christianity. And it shocked everybody, and it might have cost him his career, except he was a brilliant scientist. So that's something to just keep in the back of your mind. You know, sometimes you have to just step out in faith. All right. This is Ian McGilchrist. Got to take another drink of tea here, sorry. Now, Ian is a psychiatrist. He is a neuroscientist, brilliant guy. He's an author, written several books on the hemispheres of the brain and how they interact with each other. And he says, in our culture, we are encouraged to think of things in a very left hemisphere dominant way. All right. What's the difference between the left and right hemispheres of the brain? Does anybody know off the top of their head? Okay. The left hemisphere is more concrete, pragmatic, rational, and it used to be thought, excuse me, that the right hemisphere was given over to flights of fancy, that it was kind of flighty, ethereal. Most modern research now says the right hemisphere of the brain is more like an overseer. Right hemisphere of the brain, and this has a lot to do with his research, it synthesizes information. It takes the rational, and it can see that there's more than one side to information. Sometimes the answer is yes. We have conflicting information, and sometimes there is no black and white. So let me put it to you like this. Are you saved? Yes. Will you be saved? Yes. So the answer is yes. Now our left hemisphere would break down because there has to be one right answer. The left hemisphere of your brain has trouble processing that. So this is where his research goes. His first book, called The Emissary and His Master, really unpacks this. The emissary has usurped the role of the master without any of the wisdom that goes with being the master. So he's positing in his theories that the left side of our brain, ever since the Enlightenment, has been encouraged to take over. And it is supposed to have emissary or a subservient role. And the left brain, the reductionist, materialist, naturalistic, concrete side of our brain, should be feeding this data to the right side of the brain, who can take the 50,000-foot view, and it can see everything that's going on. But our society, he argues, is given over to the idea that everything has to be reduced to a binary. It has to either be true or not true. And I think that follows my idea of the narrative that's being pushed is reductionist, materialistic, and naturalistic. It's all left brain, and it just flows right out of his research. Okay. And this is the meme that floats around all the time. That's Steven Crowder drinking a coffee, and he says, "The Enlightenment desensitized the Western world to the spirit realm, changed my mind." I think there's something to that. Getting back to McGilchrist. The right hemisphere is aware of a thing and its value and its opposite may both have validity. Again, like the salvation idea. A lot of times when Bill's up here and somebody will ask him a question, and the answer is yes, because both things can be true. I love this quote. The left brain gets in a huff when it's contradicted because it knows it's right. It's always right. So when you have this internal conflict and you know something's right, but you also know I should really stand back and examine all sides of this thing. There may be more to it than I think is going on. The left brain thinking has become a positive feedback loop. Anybody know what that is? Positive feedback loop. What's positive feedback loop, Bill? Feeds? Yes. It feeds upon itself and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and if it's a nuclear reactor, you have a China syndrome. So, that's what the left brain, left to its own devices, will do. However, he says we need to have the right brain involved to have a negative feedback loop. And a negative feedback loop is like your thermostat. When it starts getting hot, it kicks on the air conditioner and it comes back down. Starts getting too cold, kicks on the heater, and the temperature comes up. That's what our right brain does. And the right brain is the master. Can't let the left brain have control. And the left brain is a metaphor for society and for the news and for culture. So that's my thesis that I've taken from his work. All right. We probably have less wisdom than Western culture has ever had. There's so many things we don't think about or know about. We just pat ourselves on the back because we've got a more technological grasp on certain things. But in terms of human wisdom, understanding what a human being is and what life is for, we have hit rock bottom. And this guy is a deist, if anything. He is not a Christian. He's trying to be objective. He thinks that there might be a God, but he's by no means where we're at. He's a product of science, and yet he can see the forest for the trees. So having said all that, if you think these contradict Christianity and science, you will know almost nothing about both. Everybody remember Isaac Newton? Now, he was the father of science. I think he invented algebra, calculus, I'm not sure. Anyway, he wrote more about the Bible than he did about science. Does anybody know that? These ideas do not contradict. They all go together. All right, so get back to a little scripture that might tie some of this together. Yeshua says, "See, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." Does it feel like we're sheep in the midst of wolves? I think it does. And we may not be the emissaries sent out in the first century, but I think this is kind of a parallel. The world has no use for our kind of reasoning. So we need to be wise as serpents. We need to try and understand these things and question everything that we're being taught and be innocent as doves. If you've got baggage, it's coming out. All right. I want to talk a little bit about some logical fallacies. These are some things that'll trip us up when we're trying to examine the narrative, when we're trying to figure out what's going on. I'll talk a little bit about Hobson's choice, a false dichotomy, Hegelian dialectic, and lastly, the appeal to authority. And I'll talk about that a little bit right now. Who's heard of credentialism? Okay. This is the idea, and you see it a lot on the left. I'm not going to believe anything unless it comes out of the mouth of somebody with a lot of letters behind their name. Fauci. Yes. Did I say that? The appeal to authority is endemic in our society. And let me put it to you like this. Did Yeshua go to Dallas Theological Seminary to pick his disciples? No. He went to the docks. He got a bunch of longshoremen. Now, they obviously understood him. They obviously were able to receive his message. So they didn't have any letters behind their name, but I think they were the guys for the job. So let's not get hooked into that trap of always needing someone with a lot of letters behind their name. I got to have another drink of tea here. Getting dry mouth. Sorry about that. Hobson's choice. Okay. This is Thomas Hobson. Not to be confused with Thomas Hobbes. He looks like a shyster. Anyway, he was. What he would do, he rented horses in England. And he would tell everybody who wanted a horse, you go into the stable and you go to the first stall on the left and you take that horse. And that's the one I want you to ride. And so people go in there and they see all these stalls. And they see this horse and they pick it out. Now, this was the illusion of choice. There really wasn't a choice. That was the only horse in the barn. The other horses were out on pasture. They needed to be cooled down. They were being ridden, etc., etc. So sometimes when we see a choice, it's not really a choice. It's a Hobson's choice because there is no alternative. Okay? False dichotomy or a false dilemma. It's either or reasoning, an informal fallacy based on the premise that erroneously limits what options are available. In its most simple form, it's called the fallacy of bifurcation. All but two alternatives are excluded. Democrats and Republicans. Does anybody buy into the complete message that either one of these parties gives us? No. It's a false dichotomy. But we have to identify as one or the other. We're one of the few countries on this earth that has this system, but it's what we've been blessed with, so we'll have to make do. But be aware that when you're presented that these are your choices, oftentimes they're not. Oftentimes there's another alternative. Okay. And Hegel, the Hegelian dialectic. He is up to no good. Look at those eyes. The Hegelian dialectic is often presented as problem, reaction, solution. Actually, what Hegel proposed was thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And his idea was you've got something that you're believing. That's your thesis. Someone over there has another idea that would be the antithesis or antithesis. And if you're going to be intellectually honest, you're going to take what you think and pit it against what he thinks and see if the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It may not. But there oftentimes is a synthesis. Now, this has been kind of taken and morphed into problem, reaction, solution. And this is what we get a lot of times. Rahm Emanuel was a master of this. I don't know if you remember him. Never let a crisis go to waste. So, if you have a crisis, whether it's genuine or you manufacture it, then there's going to be some reaction to it that needs to be dealt with. And so, if you have this crisis that you've manufactured and you have a reaction, you have to bring the solution to bear. And oftentimes, well, I think every time this is employed, that solution is prearranged. So it looks like something went wrong, this is what happened, and this is what we got to do to fix it, when the whole thing's been engineered. Okay? So that's the Hegelian dialectic as has been presented to us. Actually, it's not a bad idea, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis in its purest form, because you can take your opponent's idea or someone you're talking with and you can try and steelman their case. You can try and look at what they're saying and say, okay, let me deal point by point here and then ask you if this is what you're saying. And if it is, then you can take that information and pit it against what you think and see if there's something that might come of that. And that's not a bad way to study. I think that's what we ought to do. But it's been turned into this problem, reaction, solution that's just a way to get us to do horrible things. Anyway, let's take a look at this. This is John 1:17. And this is two ways that this scripture has been presented to us. This is the Word of Yahweh Bible. And it says, "For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Yeshua the Messiah." Tree of Life version says, "Torah was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Yeshua the Messiah." That read a little different? Yes, it does. Now that word is kai, that word that can be translated as either but or and. 99% of the time, it's and. But in this case, we're presented with a dichotomy, but it's either or. Is that a real choice? Or is maybe the truth a little more right-brained, the truth a little more holistic? It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. It may be both and. And I think the second one is probably a little more true to the intent. Torah was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Yeshua the Messiah. All right. This is where we're going to take a little bit of a left-hand turn. Might be a hard left, but I think it's important that we get this as part of our vocabulary and maybe a little bit of our understanding. So, questioning God or testing God. And the first thing most of us are going to think about is Matthew 4, when Yeshua was tested in the wilderness, when Hasatan came to test him after 40 days of fasting. And Yeshua said to him, "It has also been written, you shall not try Yahweh your Elohim." And that's the Greek word ekperizo. which means to test specifically character and power. And this is maybe where our minds usually go. You shall not test Yahweh your God. Test his character and his power, his ability to do things, the fact that he is who he says he is. I think that's where we go off the rails. Looks like I got part of that slide cut off, but anyway. This comes from Deuteronomy 6:16. You shall not test Yahweh your Elohim as you tested him in Massah. Who remembers this story? Massah and Meribah. All right. Now, the word in Hebrew, which would be the equivalent, is nisah, to put to the proof or the test. And I like the way Bullinger puts this, questioning Yahweh's presence. Now, we'll read the story, and that'll give us a little better flavor for what we mean. The story, the narrative that we're going to take a look at here is Exodus 17, 1 through 7. Excuse me. In the Hebrew, it shouldn't be, I'm not sure which one that is. All the congregation of the children of Israel traveled from the wilderness of Sin by their journeys according to Yahweh's commandment and encamped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test Yahweh?" The people were thirsty for water there. And the people murmured against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to kill us, our children, and our livestock, and with thirst?" Now, if we remember the narrative, these people had seen the Red Sea part. They had seen the Nile turned into blood. They'd seen the frogs, the flies, the lice. They'd seen the darkness. They'd seen all this stuff. They knew the character of this God who had brought them out. A couple of days after things get hard, then they start murmuring. And that's what the problem is. That's what it all goes back to. Now, this testing can mean to strive or contend or to quarrel or to grapple with or to wrangle. In and of itself, those things aren't bad. We can ask the Father. We can wrestle with him. But when we impugn his character and when we say, is he really with us? When you know that he is and he's given you multiple abundant evidence that he is, that's the rub. That's where we run into problems. So I'll read the rest of this narrative. Moses cried to Yahweh saying, "What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." Yahweh said to Moses, "Walk on before the people and take the elders of Israel with you and take the rod in your hand which you struck the Nile and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, and the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because the children of Israel quarreled, and because they tested Yahweh, saying, "Is Yahweh among us or not?" So it's this contention, and the Hebrew word is rib, a controversy. The people wanted to stone Moses and okay, I already read that part. Moving along. Is Yahweh among us or not? They heard the voice of Yahweh God walking in the garden. Okay, this is from Genesis. He does walk among us. There's multiple instances of this. This is the first of several that I want to bring to your attention. So when these people at Massah and Meribah were having a hard time deciding if Yahweh was with them, after he had already delivered them multiple times, the proof is in the pudding. You've got to assume that they knew all these stories. Yahweh was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and his man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh among the trees of the garden. In Deuteronomy 23, "For Yahweh your God walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and to give up your enemies before you. Therefore your camp shall be holy, that he may not see an unclean thing in you and turn away from you." Now, this is a little bit later, but it's part of the narrative. He does walk among us. He is with us. A little bit later from the Exodus 17 is Leviticus 26, where he says, "I will set my tent among you, and my soul won't abhor you. I will walk among you. I will be your God, and you will be my people." And finally in 2 Corinthians 6:16, "What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For you are a temple of the living God, even as God said, I will dwell in them and walk in them." So these people just like us, have no excuse. We have example after example that the Father is with us. He does walk with us. So that's where we get in trouble, is questioning that when we know. Okay. With this line of questioning, I'm going to argue they were slandering him. They were impugning his character. Might even have been blaspheming him. They were encroaching on his authority, character, and power. They were trying to assign it to who knows what, but not to him. They were piercing him. They were, I forgot what the word for that is, but they were questioning who he was, even when they knew. And that's the biggest problem. And like Hasatan said, hath God said. All right. So we're never called the adults of Israel. We are called the children of Israel. And you can learn many things from children, like how much patience you have. So the Father has a lot of patience for us. And we're going to screw up, and sometimes we're going to maybe ask if he really is with us. But bottom line is, you know. And when you start vocalizing that, especially among a crowd, and incite things to violence, that's where we go astray. All right. The rest of the story, Deuteronomy 6. Be on guard, lest you forget Yahweh who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Fear Yahweh your God and serve him. Swear by his name. Do not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are all around you. Yahweh your God is a jealous El in your midst. Lest the displeasure of Yahweh your God burn against you. Then he shall destroy you from the face of the earth. Don't try Yahweh your God as you tried him at Massah. I think that's the last one of those, except for, I want to read this Exodus 17 one more time, put a little bit more emphasis on it, and you can see where it is. Therefore, the people strove with Moshe and said, give us water to drink. And Moshe said, why do you strive with me? Why do you try Yahweh? The people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moshe and said, why did you bring us out of Egypt, excuse me, to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the strife of the children of Israel, and because they tried Yahweh, saying, is Yahweh in our midst? So I just want that one to sink in. That's where we get in trouble. So we need to have patience and wisdom. All right. What does questioning God really mean? Probably a lot of this is going to be really obvious, but I'm going to state the obvious because sometimes we need to hear that. Okay, that is the breastplate of the high priest, and I don't know if you can read it. There's letters being projected out of it. Whether or not that's actually how it happened or not, the Urim and the Thummim were for asking questions with. They were for questioning God. We do have that right ability. He's given us the need to question him on our trajectory, on our direction, on what we ought to be doing. Not who he is. We need to establish that. But once we know, we're going to get in trouble if we keep bringing that up. That's what the narrative seems to be saying to me. So we can ask him things. Judges 6:36, and this is one everybody knows. Gideon said to Elohim, if you are saving Israel by my hands, as you have said, see, I am placing a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and if it is dry all around, then I shall know that you are saving Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so. And he rose early the next morning and pressed the fleece and wrung dew out of the fleece to fill a bowl of water. Gideon said to Elohim, do not be displeased with me, and let me speak only this time. Please let me try only this time with the fleece, and please let it be dry only on the fleece, and let there be dew on the ground. Elohim did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on the ground, dew all on the ground. So this is the one we always think about. There's actually another relatively related fleece story here that we probably don't think about, but I think it's worth mentioning. And this is when Jonathan and his armor bearer were at the bottom of this canyon, and the Philistines had the high ground. And the Philistines were able to pretty much shut them in. And so Jonathan wanted to do something about this impasse, and him and his armor bearer threw out a fleece. And this is the story. Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go over to the outpost of these uncircumcised. If so, Yahweh does work for us, for there is no hindrance for Yahweh to save by many or by few." His armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart, incline yourself. See, I am with you, according to your heart." Jonathan said, "See, we are passing over to the men and show ourselves to them. If they say this to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we shall stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say this, 'Come up to us,' then we shall go up, for Yahweh has given them into our hand, and this is the sign to us." He wasn't afraid to ask. He knew who his God was. He just needed a little bit of direction. Genesis 24:14. Excuse me. This is Rivka at the well, and I'm sure everybody knows the story, but in context, I think we need to read it. "Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, 'Please let down your jar to let me drink,' and she says, 'Drink, and let me water your camels too,' let her be the one to whom you have appointed for your servant Yitzhak. And let me know by this that you have shown loving commitment to my master." And it came to be, before he had ended speaking, that see, Rivka, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her jar on her shoulder. And the young woman was very good looking, a maiden, no man knowing her. And she went down to the fountain, filled her jar, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please let me drink a little water from your jar." She said, "Drink, my master." She hurried to let down the jar to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "Let me draw water for your camels too, until they have finished drinking." How specific is that? So don't be afraid to ask him in a very specific way. He's demonstrated he'll answer. Okay. This is another one that everybody thinks about, Malachi 3:10. "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me now in this." He commands us to test him in this. Not his character, not who he is, not whether he's walking in our camp, but in specific things about direction, what we ought to be doing, our trajectory, our vector. In this, says Yahweh of armies, "If I will not open up to you the window of heavens and pour out on you a blessing that there shall not be room enough for." All right. So, don't quench the spirit. Don't despise prophecies. Prove them all. Hold fast to what is good. Acts 17:11 says, "Now these were more noble than those in Thessalonica," and these are the Bereans, "who received the word with great eagerness and searched the scriptures daily to see if these things were so." So that is our guide to not being deceived. That is our guide to questioning the narrative. That is the narrative that we test against. Okay. I'm sure everybody knows this one. Bankers are never shown counterfeit money. Everybody know that? Because if they see the genuine all the time and someone slips them a counterfeit, their alarm bells should go off. Something in their being says, there's something not right here. The analogy is our scripture. If we know it, and we're being fed this pablum, this narrative, this false dichotomy, all the metaphors that I've given, if we know what the genuine is, when we see the counterfeit, it'll jump off the page at us. Okay? 1 Peter 3:15. "Sanctify the Messiah as king in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asks you, and a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear." A lot of us forget that last part, with meekness and fear, but that's just as valid as the rest of us. We need to have an answer. We need to know what the scripture says. If we're going to challenge the official narrative, we need to know what is true. "Do your utmost to present yourself approved to Elohim, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth." Proverbs 15:28. "The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wrong pours out evil." And Isaiah 8:20. "To the Torah and to the witness, if they do not speak according to this word, it is because they have no daybreaker, no light in them. To the law and to the testimony," is how the King James renders that. Okay. John 7:16. "Yeshua answered them, saying, My teaching is not mine, but he who sent me. If anyone desires to do his desire, he shall know concerning the teaching whether it is from me, or whether I speak from myself. He who speaks from himself is seeking his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moshe give you the Torah? Yet not one of you does the Torah. Why do you seek to kill me? Excuse me. So again, the scripture is our metric. That's what we measure everything against. That's how we know it is from Elohim. And finally, well, not finally, for this section, we're getting close to the end. Ask, it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. You just got to ask for this. Your Father wants to bless you with discernment. He wants to give you understanding. But we need to ask for it. That's just how it works. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. All right. Deuteronomy 17:6. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall he that is about to die be put to death. And I won't go through all these, but Paul even uses this metaphor. It's for a capital case, but there's truth in the idea that we need multiple witnesses to establish whether something is right or wrong. All right, moving along. I think we're doing good on time here. Okay, what do we do with this stuff? We desire you, brother, warn them that are unruly, and comfort the feeble-minded. I love this translation. I feel like the feeble-minded a lot when I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Forbear the weak, have continual patience toward all men. So, yeah, if we can comfort each other and realize that some of us aren't the sharpest spoon in the drawer, I think we're going to be okay. Okay, the vector. Where are we headed with all this? Remember, a vector is a combination of speed and heading, correct? Quantity and direction. All right. Okay, I'm going to have you keep me honest, Bill. Okay. Where we're going, how fast we're going. Does anybody recognize this metaphor in terms of exponents? What's an exponent? It is n to the power of x. So this is a chessboard. It could be any game board, but for this metaphor, it's chess. And the story goes, in India, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, maybe even thousands, the king was getting bored. He didn't have all the amusements he wanted. And so one of his palace courtiers invented a game for him. And the game was chess. And the king was fascinated with it. And he loved chess. And he told the guy, I'll give you anything you want up to half my kingdom. And this guy was pretty clever. And he said, okay, here's what I want. I want you to put 1 grain of rice on the first corner of the chessboard. And every day I want you to double that grain of rice until it gets to the end. And that's all I want. I'll be fine with that. King's like, done! Sold. Good deal. Well, what happens when you get to the back half of the chessboard? Yeah, his advisors came to the king and they said, we can't pay this. The king said, oh, and his advisor said, there isn't enough rice in China for this. We do not have enough rice. There's not enough rice in the world because of the power of exponents, because how fast doubling occurs. Okay, now keep that metaphor in your mind. Who's heard of Moore's Law? Okay. Gordon Moore was an Intel exec maybe 40, 50 years ago. He observed that roughly every 2 years, the processing power of a computer doubled. Does that sound familiar? Okay. Well, it's gotten to the point where it may be every 6 months at this point. But we'll say for the point of metaphor that every 2 years, the computing power of computers doubles. That means that new advances are made, computers get smarter, they have the ability to do twice as many calculations every 2 years. Now, it is predicted that around every 6 months we will double. Today, almost entirely irrelevant. Just count a few doublings, and it means that it's way outside the realm of human intelligence. And this is on Moore's Law by a guy who wrote a book about where maybe we're headed with computers and artificial intelligence. This doubling can get out of hand very easily. Another thing he says is we need to develop AI that has an ethical code that's good for humanity. And that's a huge challenge because humanity's never agreed on anything. That's true. But I think the God of the universe might have something to say about that. At any rate. Well, I think I might have missed a slide here. Nope, I didn't. Okay. So we've got Moore's Law. Computer processing doubles every 2 years. That's Helmut Neven. And he is a quantum computing expert. I think he's got a PhD in engineering. And he's a Google executive, and he has predicted several startling things about quantum computing. Does everybody know what quantum computing is? Okay, you got that right. Nobody knows what it is. It works. It's very fast. Nobody knows how it happens. Quantum computing sends a problem somewhere. Nobody really knows, and an answer comes back in a minute fraction of the time it would take for a conventional computer to come up with the answer. And as conventional computers are getting smarter, quantum computers are also getting smarter, but not at an exponential rate. Not like Moore's Law that doubles every 2 years. It's at a double exponential rate. Okay, keep that in your mind. He predicts that quantum computing power is growing at a double exponential rate. Moore's Law doubles every 2 years. So doubling every 2 years, in 5 years you would see a 16-fold increase in Moore's Law. In Neven's Law, in those same 5 years, you will see a 65,000-fold increase. Does that scare anybody? Does that tell anybody that maybe we ought to be questioning the narrative? Like Chuck Missler says, it's a sprint to the finish line. Things are ramping up to the point where the parabola is about to go straight up. Okay? With doubling exponential growth, it looks like nothing's happening, and then whoops, suddenly you're in a different world. 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3. For you yourselves know very well that the day of Yahweh comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. I get a kick out of this costume he's wearing here. I'm not sure if it's a spacesuit or what he's trying to achieve. This one's for me and John Green. He looks like he's trying to join this German heavy metal band. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Rammstein, they dress weird, so is this guy. And they're both German. Anyway, that was just for me. ChatGPT-4. All right, Danny, don't get mad at me, but we're going to talk about AI. ChatGPT-4 is 10 times smarter than ChatGPT-3 was. ChatGPT-3 was our de facto standard up until about a year and a half ago. Excuse me. ChatGPT-4 has a universally accepted IQ of about 150. Who knows what Albert Einstein's IQ was? 160. So the current AI is at a genius level, just under Albert Einstein. And this guy that I've been reading his books, he says, maybe I should, humans need to say, maybe I should understand what the world's going to look like when this happens, when this doubling happens, when ChatGPT 3 is 10 times stupider than 4, and 5 is about to drop. Presumably it's 10 times smarter than that, and 6 has been written and it's waiting in the wings and it's in the works. So if we have an AI out there now with an IQ of 150, the next generation is ready to drop, and it may presumably have an IQ of 1,500. You see where this is going? All right, one of the things they say, what do you imagine is the best outcome we're going to see from AI? A total utopia of abundance, where we absolutely need nothing, and where not to report to stupid leaders anymore, except who wants to know who the stupid leaders are? If you have a materialistic reductionist view, that would be God. If you have a biblical worldview, that might be the beast, or at least its image. Another quote. This is from not a venture capitalist, game designer. He sold his company for about $1 billion a few years ago. Incredibly smart guy, Tom Bilyeu. AI is going to bring us as close to utopia as you can get, but it's going to be on the other side of some horrific upheaval. Okay? What does Mo Gadot say? These are his 3 rules of AI. First, there's no stopping it. And by the way, this guy was an executive at Google. He was, I think he was in charge of Google X. He was really high up the food chain. Not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. First, there's no stopping AI. 2, AI will be smarter than people. Arguably, it's getting there right now. 3, bad things will happen in the process. That is such a cheery thought. For then there shall be great distress, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, nor shall ever be. Does that sound like maybe something that we shouldn't look forward to, that maybe these bad things that will happen, this horrific upheaval, it's not going to get better in terms of reductionist materialism, the world. In terms of our biblical worldview, yes, it will, but we'll see what happens. AI is a synthetic God we're creating. This is from a tech guy who built a car that gets 100 miles to the gallon and has the performance of a Dodge Viper, a Corvette, and a Tesla. Not a stupid guy. He sees where we're headed with this stuff. Who knows what a deep fake is? A deep fake is a video that has been enhanced to the point where you can't really tell what's right and what's wrong, what's true and what's not. It's a video, an image, etc., in which a person's face or body or voice has been digitally altered so that they appear to be someone else. It's typically used maliciously to spread false information. Alternatively, an image or recording that has been convincingly altered and manipulated to misrepresent someone as doing or saying something that was not actually done or said. Does that scare anybody? Okay. I'm going to tell you, we're there. This is happening right now. You can't believe anything you see on a screen. Brad Scott's last message, who remembers that? The image of the beast, equipping the image of the beast. I think he was here about 5 years ago. And one of the things he said that really resonated with me, he said, there's coming a time when you won't be able to believe anything you see on a screen. The only thing you will be able to believe is a personal interaction, face-to-face, panim panim, like we're doing right here, right now. I'm telling you, I think we're there. And so we need to question these narratives. We need to question what's being fed to us. So, moving along, one of the places this might take us is immortality. This then is the end, when he delivers the kingdom to Yahweh, even the Father, when he makes to cease all rule and authority and power, for it is right for him to reign until he puts all enemies under his feet, and the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. Now, we believe this, but so do the materialists, so do the reductionists, so do the atheists. But they're going to go about it a different way. This is a quote from Dr. Peter Attia. He studies longevity. That's his whole claim to fame. He says, in 10 years, we're going to be immortal because when you have an AI that can solve the problem today, that AI was able to predict the folding structure of a protein only knowing the primary sequence of amino acids. And that's too deep for me, but apparently it's a big deal. And you look at the pace at which AI is growing, what it is going to be solving in 10 years, it's going to solve aging. So I've met with many people, some of whom I think are incredibly intelligent, who say, look, in 10 years, it doesn't matter. Just don't die for the next 10 years, and it's all going to be okay, because in 10 years, AI will have solved death. Does that frighten you? Should. What should it make us think of? And in those days, men shall seek death and not find it. They shall long to die, but death shall flee from them. So, Dr. Peter Diamandis Goes on to say, so you've got an extra 20 years. Most people can figure out what to do with that. Now say you've got 50 years. Most people's brains will break. Maybe they'll seek death and not find it because they've achieved it a different way. Excuse me. This is Timothy Alberino. I've read some of his books. He's kind of fringy. He's kind of out there, so I'm not going to recommend him, but I like weird stuff. Anyway, he's got some interesting things to say. In his last book, Birthright, this was kind of the premise of his book. It distilled down to a couple of sentences here. The seal of Adam's dominion on the earth is being an image bearer of God. Okay, that's his premise. It's the Jacob and Esau story, to sell our birthright for a bowl of stew, to give away our humanity for life extension. He thinks this is going the same place. He thinks AI is going to solve all of this, and he actually does have a biblical worldview. So a lot of people see where all this is headed. Okay, and this is another one that's probably just for me. Remember the Game Genie back in the day? Live forever, jump higher, run faster, all this stuff. That's where, this is like the best analogy I could think of. They're trying to hack humanity. They're trying to achieve this a different way. Anyone who enters the sheepfold not through the gate is in trouble, and that's what they're attempting to do here. So I think we need to question that. Okay, on to the Olivet prophecies. For then there shall be great distress, such as there has never been since the beginning of the world till this time, nor shall it ever be. If those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the sake of the chosen ones, or the elect, those days shall be shortened. If anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there, don't believe. False messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I forewarned you. Okay. I want to take a look at that word shortened, if the days had not been shortened. Now, it can mean to abridge or curtail. I think Thayer's says to lop or prune. Okay, I'm going to argue that might be the better understanding, to just cut it right off. I think there might come a point where things are going along, they're marrying, giving in marriage, and then all of a sudden things just have to be cut off because it cannot go any further. And I'm going to try and substantiate this with Genesis 11. But Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower that men were building, and Yahweh said, if, as one people speaking the same language, if they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down, confuse their language, they will not understand each other. So Yahweh scattered them from there over the face of the earth, over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. I think if he hadn't done that, we would be in the position we're at now. All the world speaking one language. AI is actually responsible for a lot of that. Anything we decide to do, we can, including conquering death a different way, not the Father's way. So, what are some takeaways? If those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved. You can be fooled. If it were possible, you can be fooled. That's kind of the whole point of what I'm talking about here. If it were possible, the very elect could be fooled. Now, if we've got the Spirit of God working in us, we're going to be all right. But I mean, imagine how many people aren't counting on that, don't have a relationship with the Creator and His Messiah. So, you're not pushed off the path, you're coaxed off the path. Shortened, I think, would be truncated, probably be a better understanding. If those days were not shortened, no flesh would survive. Does that mean only machines would be left? Does that mean we're machines? I don't know. But I think we've got to have our eyes wide open. And I think nothing will be impossible for them. I think that's exactly what happened in Genesis 11 is where we're headed right now. Again, with the Olivet prophecies. If anyone says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or there, look, do not believe. So, looking is this is the same passage I read before. Looking is what I think is salient about this. And I want to tie it to Luke 21. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and much glory. And when these matters begin to take place, look up and lift your heads, because redemption draws near. What's the alternative to looking up? Looking at your phone, looking down. This is the world. This is materialism. This is reductionism. This is atheism. The Messiah's coming back in the clouds. Look up. Okay. More of the antidote to this. The Spirit of truth. When that one comes, the Spirit of truth, it will guide you into all truth. For it will not speak of itself, but whatever it hears, it will speak. And it will announce the coming things to you. The NAB says, the Spirit of truth which the world cannot accept because it neither sees nor knows it, but you know it because it remains with you and it will be in you. Okay, some final thoughts. Proverbs 1:22. How long, you simple ones, would you love simplicity, and shall scoffers delight in their scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? So let me put it to you like this. You're here because you've questioned the narrative. You're not a Catholic or a Muslim or an atheist because you did question the narrative. But there's something coming that, if it were possible, the very elect could fall off the path. So I think we need to be highly skeptical of every narrative that we're being fed. More final thoughts. This is my last slide. This is Revelation 22:11. Let the one who does what is evil continue to do evil, and let the filthy person continue to be filthy. Let the righteous person continue to do what is right, and the holy person continue to be holy. There's coming a point where it's going to be what it is, and you are what you are. And if you are fooled, you're fooled. And if you want to be fooled, like it says in Romans 1, he'll turn you over to that. He'll turn you over to the lust of your hearts. All right, that's all I have. Thanks for putting up with me again. So question the narrative, question everything. You guys got any questions?
And let's question John. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate you giving us all this. Got some good notes. I had a thought when you mentioned that Hegelian dialectic, the idea of you create a problem, you get the anticipated reaction, you've already got the solution in place. Mm-hmm. A lot of that seems to be the problems basically seem to be about generating fear in people, and really illegitimate fear. The only legitimate fear being the fear of God. So you can generate a fear of death or disease or financial disaster. So the antidote to a lot of that is the more the fear of God you have, the less of the fear of these illegitimate things you'll have. You'll be less susceptible to the problems and the reactions they're expecting from you. You won't give them the reaction that they want. I just had that thought. And one other quick one about the one language, Genesis 11, 5 through 8. They were of one language and nothing was impossible. I was wondering if maybe just the computer languages, which are pretty much universal, could represent some kind of universal language. And that's kind of maybe behind where they're developing this AI stuff. I don't know if you had a thought on that.
Well, sort of. Let's unpack this a little bit. Let's go back to Ian McGilchrist. Left brain. Left brain is, it's either right or it's wrong, it's on or it's off. Does that sound like binary language? Does that sound like machine code to you? That's the narrative that's being pushed. He thinks, and I think he is right, ever since the Enlightenment, we're being pushed down that path. We are encouraged not to take a 50,000-foot view. I'll give you a metaphor here. Okay, this is the metaphor of time, and the idea is you're watching a parade. You're on a street corner. There's a parade coming up this way, and it's going down that way. And you can see the float right in front of you. And you can see the next one coming up, and then sort of down further, you can sort of make out what the floats are. And then the one that just left, you can see it pretty good. And the one after that, you really can't see it all. That's your perspective. That's very, very left brain. This is the one that's in front of us. This is what we're focusing on. Okay, time from the Father's perspective is from a satellite view. He can see that whole parade. He can see the whole thing moving. That's what I think we need to try and emulate, is try and take it all in, let our right brain take its rightful role, and not have this reductionist view that it's got to be everything binary. Does that help at all, Bill? Okay.
I had two things.
Sure.
One, I thought it was interesting. There was a video that went out maybe a month ago, of 2 AI agents, and they said that people will start having AI assistants.
Wow.
And the one guy's AI assistant was calling a hotel to just book a room for him, but the phone call from the AI assistant was answered by an AI assistant for the hotel. Well, so they're playing back the tape of this, and the 2 AI assistants start talking to one another in a completely other language. They would you like to switch to, I don't remember what the language was called. It was something, but it sounded a little like a combination of a song and the old sound that the modems would make when they were connecting.
Right.
Anyway, so I thought that was interesting because Bill asked about languages. So apparently it's creating its own language so that it can talk around us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe I could address that one. In Mogadot's work, one of the things that he said, he quotes, and I'm not sure what organization sponsored this, but it was 2 AIs, excuse me, that were having an interaction, and they were negotiating. The one AI, Alice, had so many units, and Bob had so many units, and they were trying to trade them back and forth. And it started out much the same way you and I would talk. Well, I've got 5 of these units. How many of your units would you give me in exchange for them? And it devolved very quickly into nonsense, except it wasn't nonsense. They were creating their own language that was much more efficient than English. They had to pull a plug on this thing because these things were getting way too advanced. They couldn't even understand what they were talking about until they slowed everything down and they saw that there were algorithms involved in every letter. So it's frightening. Do you have something else, brother?
I did.
Okay.
Just to comment on yours, I wonder if Hebrew is actually that complex and their language is just a very ghetto version of what Hebrew actually is once we fully understand it. Because he can't make anything, but he can copy. And so it wouldn't surprise me anyway. That's just speculation. But the other thing I was going to talk about was that Glenn Beck put out a video last week about AI, and it was very apocalyptic and dramatic, as Glenn Beck is wont to do. But the point he was trying to make is that he had decided that he didn't want to not use it, but that he and his encouragement was, you have to make a rule as to when this thing, gosh, I should have thought this out before I spoke.
That's right.
But he basically was trying to say, we're the master right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have to know what condition will occur that will make it the master. To where we are addicted to it and can't stop using it. And they've already proven that they can enslave us with social media and scrolling and all that stuff. And so I don't know how many people have actually tested out AI or Grok or ChatGPT or whatever, but it's doggone useful, for now.
Right.
So you have to make a decision as to when you're not going to be, because I think that's the path of deception.
Yeah. I've used it as an aggregator to find information and collate it. I was sort of flirting with asking it some deep questions, and then, I don't know, my wife and I started talking about that. I'm not sure I ought to be doing that. As far as just collating what's out there and asking questions that I could find out if I spent hours combing through archives, well, it's not really any different than computing power has always been. It's just very efficient at these things. So that's what I've been doing, just asking it to find all the data on this or that. And then I'm going to think about it. I'm not going to let it tell me what the answer is.
Amen. Who's next?
Going once.
All right, so
I feel like you're going to grill me, Ryan.
No, I love how you brought up the it was the competition for the folding of proteins.
Okay.
I actually give me a second.
So apparently that made some sense
Yeah.
to you. Okay.
Oh yeah, no. So that competition was actually really crazy. Because they would put hundreds of AIs year after year after year against one another to see, hey, can we predict the folding of proteins,
Yeah.
right? And the bar was super low, 80%. Like if we can do 80%, it's a working AI, right?
Mhm.
Nothing. 40, maybe 45%, nothing could get close.
Mhm.
And then 1 year, some guy shows up with an AI, 99%.
Wow.
And within 2 years, it had classified over 16 million proteins.
Yeah.
Right? That's just one AI.
Right.
Right? And then, you're talking about quantum computing
Mhm.
and the way it's growing and how quickly it's growing, right? One thing I didn't hear you say is CRISPR.
Yeah, I mean, there comes a point where you got to just sort of limit this. But yeah, go ahead.
So we kind of we talked about the computing side of
Mhm.
things. We talked about the folding of proteins,
Mhm.
right? CRISPR is the editing of genes and DNA,
Yeah.
right? And recently, they've embarked on a journey to recreate the woolly mammoth
Yeah.
by taking elephants
Right.
and modifying the gene to recreate woolly mammoths, right? And as a concept, they took a mouse, put woolly mammoth genes into the mouse, and now we have a long-haired mouse, like a really fluffy mouse, right?
Right.
Taking all of those, how soon are we going to have an AI that can calculate every genome, possible combination, cure every possible sickness, including aging, which is classified by the United States as a disease, right? And turn it into, you want those 50 years or 100 years?
Yeah.
Right? I could fill 50 years,
Well,
but 100 years.
you've got a repentant heart and a servant's heart and a biblical mindset. If you don't have that, it'll become torture. So again, this woolly mammoth that they're recreating, the conventional wisdom would say, did we learn nothing from Jurassic Park?
Apparently not. Anyway, just wanted to bring up CRISPR because
Yeah, appreciate
it's
that.
a huge thing.
Yeah, and I talked about this death is the last end to be overcome, and both sides believe this. Well, Casper Crisp 9, that may be their methodology. So thank you, Ryan. That was easier than I thought, man. You're a smart dude. I thought you were going to rake me over the coals.
So you mentioned that Brad taught on
Yeah.
this back when he was here last. It was his last place he spoke, I believe. And if you have an opportunity, I encourage everyone to go back and find that. But something he brought up that really made an impression on me. A lot of the things he was talking about, a lot of things that he was uncovering, projects he was working on. And in line with what you were talking about, he brought up a particular song by Simon and Garfunkel called The Sounds of Silence. Yeah. And I thought I would just read the lyrics here and keep in mind the things that John has spoken on tonight and just see if any of it resonates with you. You probably know the song. I'm not going to sing it, but it starts out, "Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping." I mean, I could pause right there, and that would be a whole sermon. What happens while we're sleeping? And I'm not talking about, the snoring kind. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In the restless dreams, I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp. When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. I can talk to Allison right here, right behind me right now and not say a word. All I have to do is just type it in this little device. People hearing without listening. People writing songs that voices never shared and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fools, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning and the words that it was forming. Then the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls and whispered in the sound of silence. If you think about that, I don't really know the history of the song, but it's almost like they were getting a glimpse into what this was going to be like.
Yeah.
How many people have you heard about? They listen to this instead of read a map, or the person sitting next to them and they drive off a cliff because, well, this knows better than the human sitting here. Or divorces and breakups happen because one person's, mistress or, male counterpart is the phone. They can't put it down. They're addicted, like you said.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond that. I mean, pick your phone up if you have the little thing that says how many hours you spent on it this week. And it's stunning because we get to where we use it for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's more to that song than meets the eye, and you can probably speak to a lot of it. But a lot of things that you talked about tonight, I feel connect deeply with that. And if you have a chance, go back and listen to the message that Brad gave, because it didn't go into AI as deeply as you did. It's definitely worth listening to and really praying about this. Something might be convenient, and the latest greatest, I want the iPhone 14,000, because I can have it first and have all the great gadgets. But what are you really getting?
Right.
What are you opening the door to? We don't realize the Pandora's box that we open on some of these things.
Yeah, one thing you said, that speaking without uttering a sound. Neuralink's doing that. And it's only going to get more intense and get better. It's in a positive feedback loop. It's going to understand more and more and more. I mean, Elon's doing all this stuff right now, for better or for worse. It's where we're at. And I don't know. Really wanted to maybe say a little bit more about Brad's message, because I went back and listened to it, because I thought it was timely and it was profound. And the things that he talked about that were coming are here. And that's why I thought I need to say something about this. So, you just tell me what you think, you decide, but be aware, be vigilant. Anybody else? Is that all the little ones? Going once. Going twice. We're going to pray and go home unless I see a hand. Sold. All right. If you want to stand, we'll pray and then we'll go home. Abba Yahweh, thank you for letting me deliver this message that I think came from you. Thank you for putting the words in my mouth. If there was anything that was not from you, please expunge it from the record and let it come to light. Thank you for your blessings, for the ability to come together, for the ability to meet face to face and to see each other without a digital medium. And I know some of us, that's the only way we can connect. But for those of us who can be here now, I think this is organic. It's from you. It feels right, Father. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for giving us your Son. Watch over us on the way home. And in Yeshua's name, I will say amen.